Hello my dear friends, you're on the Military Summary channel. In this short video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous night of the local time. And the most important updates are coming from Kherson direction. The Ukrainians managed to cross Dnieper river and continue their offensive operation in direction of the cities like Oleshki, Poima, Pishanovka, Podstepnaya. From this area we have just one geolocation that was published by the Russian side. On this video we can see that there was like a mine explosion. So the author of this video claims that Ukrainians, while moving along the bank of Dnieper river, got on minefields and there was like explosion. So this event took place exactly in this area. So that means that at least as a result of offensive operation, of landing operation, the Ukrainians managed to establish a very powerful and big and strong foothold on the Russian bank of Dnieper river. So this territory is under complete Ukrainian control. We will update the map before the next video. And probably that was the end of the story, but the Russian sources during the night started publishing a lot of updates from the territories in the vicinity of the cities like Podstepnaya, Pishanovka, Poima and Oleshki. For example, the Russian sources are saying that as a result of reconnaissance operation, sabotage operation, the Ukrainian sabotage group managed to get very close to the Russian cities that we just entitled, and as a result of attack they managed to destroy two civilian cars with civilians inside. There were a lot of casualties among just the people from this area. Furthermore, another Russian military expert, Ryber, reported that the storm groups of 35th and 36th Brigade continued their offensive operation along the railways. So this black line is the railways, and the main Ukrainian forces, to be more precise, the forces of 35th and 36th Brigade, continued their offensive operation along this area, because this normal area that Ukrainians can use for movements, because the rest of the territory is not very good for movements, for deployments, because of the poor quality of the ground. And also the Russians are saying that as a result of that offensive operation that Ukrainians managed to implement during 17th and 18th of October, the Ukrainians managed to establish full control over the city by the name of Poima, and to establish control over few buildings in the city by the name of Pishanovka. So this is the operation that the Ukrainians managed to implement during the previous of 36 hours, and as you can see, as a result of that attack, they managed to develop their foothold. Furthermore, the Russian sources are saying that Ukrainians continue concentration of their forces in the cities like Pridniprovsk and Stadova on this area for further offensive operation and for further moving of more forces on the Russian bank of the river. So today, at least for today, the Russians expect another 300 Ukrainian soldiers will be redeployed in this area. Furthermore, don't forget that Ukrainians during the previous days managed to concentrate significant number of forces in the vicinity of Dachi in this area, and obviously we need to expect more attempts to attack from this area in direction of Oleshki as well. And don't forget that during the entire October, the Russians were bombing and attacking the Ukrainian cities like Tyaginka, Lvova, Burgunka, Kazatska. So obviously the Ukrainians also will make attempt to cross the river in this area and to send forces in direction of the cities like Karshunka and Dnieper and the city by the name of Novokakhovka. Obviously the Ukrainians are going to do this right now because yesterday managed to attack and destroy significant number of Russian helicopters in Berdyansk. So until they have window of opportunity, the Ukrainians will try to use this situation. But this is not the most important directions. Of course, the Russians for some reasons took a decision to allow the Ukrainians to do this. Obviously the Russians saw everything, control everything, and the fact that Ukrainians managed to establish control over Poima in Pishanovka is not like the defeat of the Russians or the Russian failure. Obviously this is a part of plan. This is a part of plan when the Russians allowed the Ukrainians to land their forces, and currently the Russians control the number of forces that the Ukrainians sent on this bank, and basically they want to allow the Ukrainians to concentrate as much as possible and then to destroy them like another few thousand. But this is the plan. But we need to understand another thing, that these two directions in Oleshki and Novokakhovka are not the most important directions. Currently, the main concentration of Ukrainian forces are taking place exactly in the area between Achakov and, let's say, Dniprovsk, so on the south of Nikolaev area. And the main strike that Ukrainians are planning to implement is to attack the Kinburn Spit. Currently, the Ukrainian sources started collecting the information about this territory in the local Telegram channel channels trying to ask the local civilians to provide as much as possible information about this territory, about the Russian bases and so on. So we expect that these days, maybe today, maybe tomorrow, the Ukrainians will launch this operation as well. Of course, they will continue offensive operation from Kherson to the north in direction of Pidstepne Oleshki. And we'll see what the Russians are able to do. Maybe we are going to see a lot of updates for today. Now we are moving to another direction, to Zaporozhye area. Today the Russians also published a lot of very interesting videos and very interesting geolocations from this territory. The Ukrainian sources are saying that as a result of counter-offensive operation in the western part of Verbovo, they managed to restore control over the trenches that Ukrainians lost during the previous Russian counterattacks. I'll remind you that a few days ago the Russians launched a very powerful offensive operation in this direction, and as a result of that attack, that attack took place on the 15th of October. And as a result of that attack that we currently can see on the screen, on the 15th of October, the Russians established control over the trenches. The Ukrainians lost a very important strategical position, and now they were trying to restore. And the sources are saying, at least the geolocation confirmed this, that as a result of counteroffensive, the Ukrainians restored this position. For now, I'm not planning to change the map because we need to wait more days until the Ukrainians are able to dig in deeper. Furthermore, the Ukrainians published the video how they were trying to evacuate their damaged machine, also in the western part of Verbovo, very close to the combat line, but the Russians tracked and discovered that evacuation equipment, and as a result of anti-tank missile, that equipment was destroyed. So the evacuation, the Ukrainians haven't managed to implement evacuation successfully. So the battle in Robotina also continues. At least the Ukrainians concentrated one more time their forces on the western part, on the western part of Verbovo. Now we are moving to Avdiivka area, and today we got also a lot of updates from this territory. The Russians continue to the Avdiivka news operation, trying to attack the Ukrainians at least in three directions. The first direction is Krasnogorovka, Terikon. The second direction is from the south, from Spartak in direction of the southern part of Avdiivka. And the third direction is Pisky in direction of Pervomayska. When talking about Terikon area, the Ukrainian sources published the video of another attempt of Russian attack. Significant number of armored vehicles the Russians were using for that purposes. Furthermore, the Ukrainian sources calculated the number of losses that the Russians have since the beginning of Avdiivka offensive operation, and according to Ukrainian raw estimations with confirmed geolocations, the Russians have already lost 140 pieces of armored vehicles of different types, including tanks, armored vehicles, personal carriers, and many others. We don't have any numbers about the losses from among the personnel and soldiers, but I believe that their losses also very heavy. So based on the geolocations and based on this video that you can see currently in front of your screen, the Russians managed to get very close to the Terikon, and probably they're like on the base of the Terikon. Maybe today, maybe this night, they were trying to storm this Terikon from many sides, and I believe that today we're going to receive more updates. One more time, if the Russians are able to establish control over Terikon, this is going to be the end of Avdiivka operation, and it's going to be not a question whether the Russians are able to complete Avdiivka news operation or not. It's going to be the question when exactly this operation will be finished, this year or maybe let's say in the spring of the next year. The Russians published more videos from the southern direction, on the south Avdiivka area, and on this screen we can see the rotation process. The Russian personal carrier arrived on the edge Russian positions in the vicinity on the south of Avdiivka, on the forest to the right. Possibly these are already edge Ukrainian positions, but the Russians, I feel themselves pretty safe doing this rotation. So one squad arrived and took trenches. Another squad with wounded soldiers got on the personal carrier and evacuated from this territory. We use this video just for geolocation purposes to understand the real Russian positions. But one more time, the Russians are feeling themselves pretty secured, pretty safe. They don't see any risk. They're moving under the open air. They have some time for evacuation, for rotation, as you can see. So that means that probably on the right from this video, the tree line that located on the right of this video or on the top from the map currently is in the gray zone, or probably is under complete Russian control. This forest probably is under Russian control, because we don't see any attack from the Russian side. We don't see any Ukrainian movements. So this is something like this. The video that we can see just right now on the map probably is under complete Russian control, or at least there are no Ukrainians. And furthermore, we see the trenches that goes exactly in this forest. So this is the situation. But the only thing that in the end of this video, the Ukrainians started bombing the Russians. Just a second. Yes, this is the moment of strike. So when the Ukrainians tried to start bombing, so as you can see, very fast, very short timings between Russian arrival and the bombing of Ukrainians. So as I understand, according to geolocation, probably the Ukrainians were forced to step back further to the north, and this area either in the gray zone or under Russian control. So let's keep it like this, because as I understand, this shows a better understanding of the situation. From the south, from Pervomaysk direction, we had just artillery bombing. The Russians during the previous days managed to discover the Ukrainian mortar positions, the Ukrainian FPV drone squad positions, and as a result of artillery bombings and strikes, the Russians managed to destroy a few buildings and just to reduce the Ukrainian possibilities and number of Ukrainian forces. Nothing special, no active clashes, nothing that can help us to geolocate or to see any progress from the Russian side. Now we're moving further to Klishchiv to Bakhmut direction. We had just few geolocations from the Russian side. The Russians continue bombing and attacking the Ukrainian positions along the railways. On this video we can see the movements of the Ukrainian forces along the railways from Andreevka to Kurdyumovka. The Russians controlled the situation, and at some moment they started bombing and shelling the Ukrainians. We are using this video for the same purposes, to see the position of Ukrainian forces, to see the trenches, to see the fortifications, and to understand whether the Ukrainians were managed to cross the railways or not. And according to this geolocation, as we understand, the Ukrainians haven't managed to cross the railways. And now we will finish the video with Kupiansk-Liman front line. We haven't received almost nothing from this territory. The only important video we need to pay attention to is the artillery bombings of Kremenная forest. Very interesting video that we need to take a look at. First of all, the Ukrainians published, to be more precise, the 12th Brigade Azov brigade that a few years ago was defending the Mariupol, published the video how they were bombing and attacking the Russian forces. And a lot of very interesting details. First of all, the first video show us the movements of the Russian forces, and these movements took place exactly in this part of the Kremenная that used to be under Ukrainian control, according was colored by yellow, but now, as I understand, this territory probably is in the gray zone. Now, the next episode is the Ukrainians were attacking the Russian engineering equipment. That main purpose of this engineering equipment is to build roads, is to make like trenches, and the most important, to create fortifications. The second thing took place exactly a little bit to the east, closer to Kremenная. So this is exactly the area where the Russians tried to create road and to make roads for the next offensive operation. But the most important part, this part of this video is the final part, and let's move to the final part. And this is it. So according to the Ukrainian video, they managed to discover and to destroy the warehouse, not the warehouse, maybe some small like operational warehouse of pontoon bridges. So this is like a pontoon bridge that the Russians were planning to use to cross something, and the final video took place exactly in this area on the north of Bilogorovka. So as I understand, the Russians have already started preparation before for the next attempts and the next operation in Bilogorovka area to attack like Siversk and Bilogorovka by crossing Seversky Donets River. They have already concentrated pontoon bridges. The next step would be to create infrastructure to the south and to get the river as fast as possible, and then to launch like offensive operation behind the main forces of Ukrainians in Bilogorovka to attack, let's say, 81st Air Mobile Brigade behind them. And that's it for this short video. Military Summary channel reminds to condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.